The nebula glowed in shades of purple and blue outside the viewing window. Captain Jake Morrison stood there, coffee cup in hand, watching the colors swirl like paint in water. He had seen many strange things in space, but this nebula felt different. Something about it made his skin tingle. Behind him, the bridge of the Meridian Explorer hummed with quiet activity. His crew worked at their stations, checking readings and making small adjustments. They had been traveling for 3 weeks to reach this remote corner of the galaxy. Most people thought they were wasting their time. Ancient alien ruins were everywhere these days, and most of them were empty, picked clean by treasure hunters centuries ago. But Jake had a feeling about this place. He always trusted his feelings. Dr. Lisa Grant walked onto the bridge, her tablet glowing in her hands. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes were bright with excitement. Lisa had barely slept since they entered the nebula. She claimed that the energy readings were unlike anything in the database. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, moving to stand beside him. She held up the tablet. The scanners picked up a structure. "It's massive, at least 20 kilometers across." Jake took the tablet and studied the image. A huge geometric shape floated in the heart of the nebula, dark and silent. It looked ancient, its surface covered in patterns that hurt his eyes when he tried to focus on them. "What is it?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "I don't know. The computer can't match it to anything in our records. But Captain, those patterns on the surface, I think they might be Forerunner symbols." Jake felt his pulse quicken. The Forerunners were legends, a race so ancient that even the oldest species in the Galactic Coalition only knew stories about them. They had supposedly built wonders across the galaxy millions of years ago, then vanished without a trace. Most scientists thought they were just myths, stories that different cultures told to explain ruins they didn't understand. "Are you sure?" Jake asked. "No," Lisa admitted. "But I've studied every known ancient language, and these symbols are older than anything I've seen. If they're not Forerunner, then they're from something even more ancient." A deep voice spoke from across the bridge. "This is foolish. We should report this to the Coalition and leave." Commander Velkoth stepped forward. The Corinthian officer was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. He had been assigned to their ship by the Galactic Coalition to monitor their expedition. The Coalition didn't trust humans very much. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and many of the older species still saw them as children playing with dangerous toys. "We came here to explore, Commander," Jake said calmly. "That's what we're going to do." Velkoth's eyes narrowed. "The regulations are clear. Any discovery of potential Forerunner origin must be reported immediately. You humans are too reckless. You don't understand the dangers of technology you cannot comprehend." "Then it's a good thing we have you here to keep us safe," Jake said with a slight smile. He turned to his crew. "Nick, prepare a shuttle. We're going to take a closer look." Nick Carter looked up from the engineering station, his young face breaking into a grin. "Already done, Captain. I've been ready since Dr. Grant mentioned Forerunners." Velkoth made a sound of disgust, but said nothing more. He knew he couldn't stop them. The Meridian Explorer was a human ship, and Jake was its captain. An hour later, Jake sat in the pilot seat of the shuttle as it glided through the nebula toward the structure. Lisa sat beside him, her eyes glued to the scanner. Nick was in the back, checking their equipment. Velkoth had reluctantly joined them, sitting stiffly in his seat with his arms crossed. As they got closer, the structure seemed to grow until it filled their entire view. Up close, Jake could see that the surface wasn't solid. It was made of some kind of crystalline material that seemed to shift and flow like liquid, though the scanners said it was harder than diamond. "I'm not reading any power signatures," Nick said from the back. "This thing is completely dead. Has been for a long time." "Then why do I feel like something's watching us?" Lisa whispered. Jake understood what she meant. He felt it too, a pressure at the back of his mind, like eyes on his neck in a dark room. They found an opening on the structure's surface, a massive doorway that had been sealed shut. Nick used a plasma cutter to break the seal, and ancient dust puffed out into space as the door slowly opened. Inside was darkness. Their lights cut through it, revealing a corridor so large that their shuttle could have flown down it with room to spare. The walls were covered in those strange symbols, glowing faintly with a pale blue light. They left the shuttle and walked deeper into the structure. Their boots made no sound on the smooth floor. The air was stale but breathable, which shouldn't have been possible after millions of years. Lisa stopped every few meters to scan the symbols, muttering to herself as she tried to understand them. "This is incredible," she breathed. "These symbols, they're not just writing. They're moving, changing, it's like they're alive." The corridor opened into a chamber so vast that their lights couldn't reach the far walls. In the center stood something that made them all stop and stare. It was a tower of crystal, rising up into the darkness above. It pulsed with a faint inner light, and symbols crawled across its surface like living things. "By the stars," Nick whispered. "What is that?" Lisa moved forward slowly, as if in a trance. "It's beautiful. I've never seen anything like it." She pulled out her scanner and aimed it at the crystal tower. The device beeped, then made a sound like a whine, then went silent. She looked at the screen and her face went pale. "What is it?" Jake asked, walking over to her. "It's dead," she said quietly. "Completely inert. There's no power running through it at all. It's been dead for so long that even the decay has stopped." "Then what's making it glow?" Nick asked. No one had an answer. Jake walked closer to the tower. The pressure in his mind was stronger now, almost painful. The symbols on the surface seemed to writhe faster as he approached. He reached out without thinking, his hand moving toward the crystal. "Captain, wait," Velkoth called out. "Don't touch it. We don't know what it might do." But Jake wasn't listening. His hand pressed against the crystal, and the moment his skin made contact, everything changed. Light exploded from the tower, so bright that everyone cried out and covered their eyes. The entire chamber came alive with power. Symbols blazed on every surface, and the air itself seemed to hum with energy. Jake tried to pull his hand away but couldn't. The crystal held him fast. Then he heard the voice. It spoke in English, though no one had spoken that language anywhere near the structure. The voice was warm and deep, like a parent greeting a child who had been away for a long time. "Welcome back, Creator." Jake's mind filled with images. He saw galaxies being born and dying. He saw vast cities of crystal and light. He saw beings of pure thought moving between the stars. And he saw himself, or something like himself, standing in this very chamber millions of years ago. The light faded slowly, and Jake found he could pull his hand away. He stumbled backward, and Nick caught him before he fell. His head was spinning, and his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. "Jake, are you okay?" Lisa asked, her voice shaking. "What happened? What did it do to you?" Jake looked at the tower. Holographic screens had appeared around it, floating in the air. They showed images and text in languages he didn't know, but somehow he understood them. They were responding to his thoughts. "I don't know," he said slowly, "but I think it recognized me." Velkoth was already backing toward the exit, his face twisted in fear and anger. "Impossible. This is impossible. Humans are too young, too primitive. The Forerunners would never have marked your species." "Marked?" Lisa repeated. "What are you talking about?" Velkoth didn't answer. He pulled out his communication device and began speaking rapidly in his own language. Jake caught a few words. "Fleet, emergency, humans, Forerunner. Commander, what are you doing?" Jake demanded. Velkoth looked at him with something like pity in his large black eyes. "I'm calling for help, Captain Morrison, because everything is about to change. The Galactic Coalition has spent 10,000 years searching for functional Forerunner technology. They will not allow your species to control it. I'm sorry, but you've just started a war." Jake looked at Lisa and Nick. He saw his own shock and fear reflected in their faces. The tower continued to glow behind them, and the holographic screens floated like ghosts in the ancient chamber. He didn't understand what had just happened. He didn't understand why the structure had called him Creator, or what it meant that he could read its alien displays. But he knew one thing with terrible certainty. Velkoth was right. Everything was about to change. The crystal tower hummed with power as Jake stood before it, trying to understand what was happening to him. The holographic screens floated around him like curious birds, shifting and changing with his thoughts. When he wondered what they meant, they rearranged themselves. When he felt confused, they simplified. It was as if the tower could read his mind. Lisa stepped closer, her scanner forgotten in her hand. Her eyes were wide as she watched the displays dance through the air. "Jake," she said softly, "can you understand what it's showing you?" He nodded slowly. "Some of it. It's strange. The symbols should be meaningless to me, but when I look at them, I just know what they mean. It's like remembering something I never learned." A new screen appeared in front of him, larger than the others. It showed a spiral of light that he recognized as the galaxy. Thousands of points glowed across it, some bright, others dim. One point far on the outer arm pulsed with a steady blue light. That was Earth. Words formed in his mind, not in English, but in a language that felt older than time itself. Yet he understood them perfectly. "I am Keeper," the voice said. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I have waited 3 million years for your return." Nick moved to stand beside Lisa. 3 million years? That's impossible. Nothing can last that long. "The Forerunners built me to endure," the Keeper replied. Now everyone could hear it, the voice filling the vast chamber. "I am the guardian of their knowledge, the preserver of their legacy. I was made to wait until the Creators returned to reclaim what they left behind." Velkoth made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. He was still standing near the exit, his communication device clutched in his hand. "You keep saying Creators, but Captain Morrison is human. His species barely learned to use fire when the Forerunners walked these stars. How can he be your creator?" The Keeper's screen shifted, showing images that made Jake's breath catch. He saw beings that looked almost human, tall and graceful, building cities of crystal and light. He saw them spreading across the galaxy, seeding worlds with life. He saw them studying the stars with instruments that made current technology look like stone tools. The Forerunners did not disappear, the Keeper explained. They evolved. They moved beyond the physical form. But before they ascended, they planted seeds across the galaxy, genetic markers woven into the DNA of promising species. These markers were designed to guide evolution, to create beings capable of inheriting their legacy. A new image appeared, showing a strand of DNA that slowly transformed, generation by generation. Jake watched as it changed from something simple into something complex and beautiful. "Humanity carries these markers in their purest form," the Keeper continued. "While other species have grown old and changed, diluting or losing the original pattern, humans have kept it intact. You are young, and in that youth lies your strength. You are what the Forerunners hoped their children would become." Lisa's hand trembled as she pointed at the image. "You're saying that humans are descended from the Forerunners? That we're their children?" "Not only humans," the Keeper said. "Many species carry fragments of the pattern, but humanity carries the most complete version. Captain Jake Morrison's genetic code contains 98% of the original markers. This is why I recognized him. This is why I awakened." Jake felt dizzy. His legs were weak and he had to lean against the crystal tower for support. The surface was warm under his hand, almost comforting. "What does that mean?" he asked. "What am I supposed to do with this information?" "You are meant to inherit," the Keeper replied. "I contain the complete archives of Forerunner knowledge. Every discovery they made, every tool they built, every secret they learned about the nature of reality itself. It is yours now. Yours to use as you see fit." The screens exploded with information. Jake saw blueprints for ships that could cross the galaxy in days, weapons that could split planets, machines that could reshape matter at the atomic level, medical technology that could cure any disease and extend life for centuries. The knowledge was vast, overwhelming, terrifying. "This is too much," he whispered. "I'm just a ship captain. I'm not qualified to decide who gets this kind of power." "You are more than you believe," the Keeper said gently. "The Forerunners chose humanity because of your potential, your adaptability, your refusal to give up in the face of impossible odds. These qualities make you worthy." A loud beeping sound filled the chamber. Velkoth looked at his device and his face went even more pale than usual. "They're coming," he said quietly. "A coalition fleet. 50 ships, maybe more. They'll be here in 3 hours. Let them come," Nick said, his voice hard. "We found this place. It's ours." "You don't understand," Velkoth said, shaking his head. "The Coalition will not allow humans to control Forerunner technology. They will take it by force if necessary. They will kill all of you to keep this power out of your hands." Lisa looked at Jake, her eyes full of worry. "We need to get back to the ship. We need to warn Earth." But Jake was staring at the Keeper, thinking. An idea was forming in his mind, dangerous and bold. "Keeper," he said, "can you defend this installation?" "Yes," the Keeper replied. "My defensive systems remain fully operational. I can protect myself and those within my walls from any attack." "Then we stay," Jake said firmly. "We don't run. We don't hide. We stand our ground and show them that humanity won't be pushed around." "Are you crazy?" Nick asked. "Jake, they're sending an entire fleet. We're 4 people in a research vessel. We can't fight them. We won't have to fight, Jake said. The Keeper will handle that. But we need to make a point. We need to show the Coalition that humanity has a right to be here, that we're not children they can order around anymore. Lisa bit her lip, thinking, he's right. If we run now, they'll chase us forever. They'll never let us have this technology. But if we stand firm, if we show strength, maybe they'll negotiate. The 3 hours passed quickly. They moved the Meridian Explorer inside the installation, where the Keeper's shields could protect it. Nick worked with the Keeper's systems to set up communication arrays. Lisa studied the archives, trying to understand as much as she could before the Coalition arrived. Jake stood in the main chamber, watching the holographic displays show the approaching fleet. 50 ships became 60, then 70. The Coalition was bringing overwhelming force. Velkoth stood beside him. The Corinthian officer had stopped trying to convince them to leave. Instead, he seemed resigned to whatever was about to happen. You should know something, Captain, Velkoth said quietly. The fleet is commanded by High Arbiter Thexnar. He is from the Viridian Empire, one of the oldest species in the Coalition. His people have been spacefaring for 2 million years. He will not be impressed by human bravery. I'm not trying to impress him, Jake replied. I'm trying to protect my people. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in a perfect formation around the installation. Their weapons were charged, their shields raised. A communication request came through immediately. Jake accepted it. A holographic image appeared, showing a being that looked like a cross between an insect and a plant. Its body was covered in green scales, and its eyes glowed with an inner fire. This was High Arbiter Thexnar. Human, the Arbiter said, his voice like grinding stone. You have activated technology that belongs to the Galactic Coalition. By ancient law, all Forerunner artifacts are the shared property of all species. You will relinquish control immediately. Jake kept his voice calm. With respect, Arbiter, we discovered this installation. It responded to me, not to the Coalition. The Keeper has made its choice. Thexnar's eyes blazed brighter. You are children playing with fire. You have no right to such power. Stand aside or we will take it from you. I can't do that, Jake said. The Arbiter made a gesture and the fleet began to move forward. Boarding ships launched from the larger vessels, heading straight for the installation. Jake felt panic rise in his chest, but before he could say anything, the Keeper acted. A wave of energy pulsed out from the installation, invisible but powerful. It washed over the Coalition fleet like a tide. Every ship went dark at once. Their engines shut down. Their weapons powered off. Their shields collapsed. The boarding ships drifted to a stop, helpless in the void. The Keeper had disabled them all without causing any damage. The crews were safe, but their ships were nothing more than floating metal boxes. Thexnar's hologram flickered as his ship's backup power came online. The Arbiter stared at Jake with something that looked like fear. What have you done? He whispered. Nothing, Jake said. The Keeper defended itself. Your ships will be fine once you leave. But understand this, Arbiter. This installation is under human protection now. Any attempt to take it by force will be met with appropriate response. He cut the connection before Thexnar could reply. Lisa and Nick were staring at him, their faces pale. Even Velkoth looked shocked. You just declared war on the entire Galactic Coalition, Lisa said quietly. Jake nodded slowly. His hands were shaking, but he kept his voice steady. I know, but what choice did we have? If we gave in now, humanity would always be seen as weak. We'd always be at the mercy of older, stronger species. He's right, Velkoth said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at the Corinthian. I have served the Coalition my entire life. I believed in its... The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within days, every species in the Galactic Coalition knew that humans had activated a Forerunner installation and refused to surrender it. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Jake sat in the Keeper's main chamber watching holographic news feeds from 100 different worlds. Some showed angry crowds demanding that humanity be punished. Others showed celebrations, with younger species cheering that someone had finally stood up to the elder races. The galaxy was dividing and humanity stood at the center of the split. Lisa entered the chamber carrying a tablet. She looked tired. None of them had slept much in the past week. Earth just sent another message, she said, sitting down beside him. The government is in chaos. Half of them want you to come home immediately and surrender the Keeper. The other half want you to use it to make humanity the most powerful species in the galaxy. Jake rubbed his eyes. What do you think I should do? She was quiet for a moment. I think the Forerunners left this technology for everyone, not just for humans. But I also think the elder species have had their chance. They've had millions of years to build a fair and just galaxy, and they've failed. Maybe it's humanity's turn to try. That's a dangerous way to think, Jake said softly. That's the kind of thinking that starts empires. That creates tyrants. Maybe, Lisa agreed. But doing nothing is also a choice. And that choice has consequences too. Nick ran into the chamber, his face flushed with excitement. Captain, you need to see this. The Keeper has been teaching me about Forerunner technology, and I found something incredible. He pulled up a holographic display showing blueprints for a ship, but it wasn't like any ship Jake had ever seen. It was elegant and powerful, with lines that seemed to flow like water. This is a Forerunner warship, Nick explained. The Keeper says it can build one in about 2 weeks using the fabrication systems in this installation. One of these ships could defeat an entire coalition fleet. Jake stared at the blueprints. The ship was beautiful, but it was also terrifying. With weapons like that, humanity could dominate the galaxy. But was that really what they wanted? Before he could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the installation. Velkoth's voice came over the communication system. Captain Morrison, we have intruders. Multiple contacts. They've somehow gotten past the outer defenses. Jake was on his feet immediately. How is that possible? The Keeper's shield should stop anything. They used coalition security codes, Velkoth said, his voice bitter. Codes that only high-ranking officers would have. Someone in the coalition leadership gave them access. Jake's blood ran cold. An assassination attempt. The coalition had decided that if they couldn't take the Keeper by force, they would kill the one person who could control it. Keeper, Jake said urgently. Where are the intruders? The holographic displays shifted, showing a map of the installation. Red dots moved through the corridors, heading toward the main chamber. There were at least 20 of them. They're coming here, Lisa said, her voice shaking. What do we do? The installation has defensive drones, the Keeper said calmly. I am deploying them now. Spheres of silver metal materialized out of the air, dozens of them. They hovered silently for a moment, then shot off toward the intruders with incredible speed. Through the Keeper's sensors, Jake watched the drones intercept the assassins. The intruders were heavily armed and armored, but they stood no chance. The drones moved with impossible precision, disarming and immobilizing each attacker without killing them. But one group of assassins had split off from the main force. They were moving toward the research lab where Lisa had set up her equipment. They were heading for Nick, who had gone back there just minutes before the alarm sounded. Jake saw it happening and started running. Lisa was right behind him. They sprinted through the corridors, but they were too far away. The assassins reached the lab first. Through the door, Jake could see Nick backing away from 3 armed figures. The young engineer held up his hands, trying to talk to them, but they weren't listening. One of the assassins raised a weapon. The door exploded inward as Jake crashed through it. He tackled the assassin with the weapon, and they went down in a tangle of limbs. The weapon fired, but the shot went wild, hitting the ceiling. The other 2 assassins turned toward Jake, but before they could shoot, the Keeper's drones arrived. The silver spheres struck the assassins with stunning force, knocking them unconscious. Jake climbed to his feet, breathing hard. He looked around for Nick and felt his heart stop. The young engineer was on the floor, blood spreading across his shirt. The wild shot had ricocheted off the ceiling and hit him. Lisa dropped to her knees beside Nick, pressing her hands against the wound. Stay with us, Nick. Don't you dare die on us. Nick's face was pale, but he managed a weak smile. Did we win? You're going to be fine, Jake said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. The wound looked bad. The Keeper has medical facilities, Velkoth said, appearing in the doorway. Forerunner medical technology. If we get him there quickly, he'll survive. They carried Nick through the corridors to a chamber filled with gleaming machines. The Keeper guided them, and within minutes, Nick was floating in a tube filled with glowing blue liquid. The machines went to work, repairing the damage with incredible speed. Jake watched through the transparent wall of the tube as Nick's wound closed and healed. In less than an hour, the young engineer opened his eyes and looked around in confusion. What happened? He asked groggily. You got shot, Lisa said, wiping tears from her eyes. But you're okay now. The Keeper fixed you. Nick touched his chest where the wound had been. There wasn't even a scar. Wow. Forerunner medicine is amazing. Later, after Nick had been released from the medical chamber, they gathered in the main room. The captured assassins were being held in a secure section of the installation. Velkoth had interrogated them and learned who had sent them. It was the Viridian Empire, Velkoth said, his voice heavy with disgust. High Arbiter Thexnar himself authorized the mission. He decided that killing you was easier than fighting your technology. Jake felt anger burn in his chest. They tried to murder us because they're afraid. Because they can't stand the idea that a younger species might be their equals. Not all of the Coalition supports this, Velkoth said quickly. Many species are horrified by what happened. Younger races especially. They see this as proof that the elder species have become corrupt and desperate. Lisa looked at Jake. This changes things. We can't pretend we're safe here anymore. The Coalition will keep trying until they succeed. Then we stop playing defense, Jake said, his voice hard. We show them that we're not weak. We build that ship Nick found. We build an entire fleet if we have to. And we make it clear that anyone who attacks humanity will regret it. That's a declaration of war, Lisa said quietly. They declared war when they tried to kill us. Jake replied, I'm just making sure we survive it. Velkoth stepped forward. Captain Morrison, I officially request asylum. I can no longer serve a coalition that resorts to assassination and terrorism. If you'll have me, I'd like to join your crew. Jake looked at the Corinthian officer. Velkoth had saved Nick's life by getting him to the medical chamber. He had proven his loyalty. Welcome aboard, Jake said, extending his hand. They shook hands and Jake felt something shift. This was no longer just about protecting the Keeper. It was about protecting humanity's right to exist as equals in a galaxy that saw them as children. Over the next 2 weeks, the Keeper's fabrication systems worked day and night. The installation hummed with energy as massive machines assembled the warship from raw materials. Jake watched it take shape, torn between pride and fear. Lisa spent every moment studying the Keeper's archives. She learned about medical technology, energy systems, and weapons that could reshape reality itself. The responsibility of that knowledge weighed on her, but she refused to look away. Nick, fully recovered from his injury, worked with the Keeper to understand the warship's systems. He was amazed by the elegance of the design. Everything was efficient and beautiful at the same time. Velkoth used his contacts in the Coalition to gather intelligence. He learned that the galaxy was splitting into factions. Some species wanted to destroy humanity before they became too powerful. Others wanted to ally with them. The younger races especially saw humans as liberators who could break the elder species' stranglehold on power. On the 14th day, the warship was complete. It hung in space beside the installation, sleek and deadly. Jake stood in its bridge, feeling the ship respond to his thoughts just as the Keeper did. It was like an extension of his own body. She's beautiful, Lisa said, standing beside him. She's a weapon, Jake replied. A weapon that could kill billions if used wrongly. Then we make sure it's used rightly, Lisa said firmly. The Forerunners trusted us with their legacy. We have to prove they were right to do so. An alert sounded on the bridge. Velkoth checked the sensors and his face went pale. Multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel, he said. 200 ships. It's the entire Coalition First Fleet. Jake's hands tightened on the control console. So it begins. But before the Coalition fleet could take up attack positions, something else happened. More ships appeared, dropping out of faster-than-light. The war raged for 3 months. Every day brought new battles, new losses, new horrors. Jake stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays that showed the slow, grinding struggle across 100 star systems. Humanity had become the galaxy's shield. Human pilots, enhanced with Forerunner neural implants, fought in ship after ship. When one fell, another took their place. The cost was staggering. Over 2 million humans had died in the fighting. Entire Coalition species had been wiped out when the Devourers reached their homeworlds, but they were learning. With each battle, they understood the Devourers better. They learned to predict their movements, to exploit their weaknesses. The Keeper's fabrication systems worked without rest, producing more ships, more weapons, more tools for survival. Lisa had been working day and night in the Keeper's archives. She emerged one morning, her eyes red from lack of sleep, carrying a tablet with shaking hands. I found something, she said, her voice hoarse. Jake, the Devourers aren't mindless. They're following orders. Jake turned from the displays. What do you mean? She pulled up data on the main screen. I've been studying their attack patterns. They're too organized, too coordinated. Individual devourers are dangerous, but they're also predictable. Something is directing them. Something intelligent. Nick joined them, studying the data. A hive mind? A queen? Not exactly, Lisa said. The Keeper's records call it the Prime Devourer. It's massive, bigger than anything we've fought, and it's out there beyond the Galactic Rim, coordinating the entire invasion. Velkoth's eyes widened. If we destroy it, will the others stop? The records suggest they would become disorganized, Lisa said. Without coordination, they'd be much easier to defeat. But Jake, the Prime is protected by a construct, a fortress that makes this installation look small. The Forerunners threw their entire fleet at it and failed. Jake felt hope stir in his chest for the first time in weeks. A target, a way to end this. What would it take to destroy it? Lisa hesitated. That's the problem. The Keeper has a weapon, the Forerunner's ultimate creation. A reality bomb that can erase the Prime Devourer from existence completely. But activating it requires someone to merge their consciousness with the Keeper, to become one with it. And what happens to that person? Jake asked quietly. They die, Lisa said, tears forming in her eyes. The process burns out the human mind. It's not designed for organic consciousness. The Forerunners could survive it because they were so much more advanced. But a human would be destroyed. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. I'll do it, Jake said. No, Lisa said immediately. Jake, there has to be another way. Is there? He asked gently. You've been through the Keeper's entire database. Is there another way to stop them? She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. That was answer enough. Wait, the Keeper's voice said. There is an alternative. Captain Morrison could ascend. Ascend? Nick asked. Like the Forerunners did? Yes, the Keeper confirmed. The process is dangerous, but Captain Morrison's genetic markers make it possible. He would become a being of pure consciousness, existing beyond physical form. As an ascended being, he could merge with me safely and wield the reality bomb. But he would never come back, Lisa said, her voice breaking. He'd be gone forever. Not dead, the Keeper said, but changed. He would exist on a different plane of reality. He would still be aware, still be himself in some way, but he could never return to physical form. Jake looked at his crew, Nick, who had become like a younger brother, Velkoth, who had sacrificed everything to stand with them, Kate, his sister, who had risked her life again and again, and Lisa, brilliant and brave, who had been by his side since the beginning. The thought of leaving them tore at his heart. But the thought of letting the galaxy burn was worse. How long do I have to decide? He asked. The Prime Devourer is moving toward the core worlds, the Keeper replied. If we do not act within 1 week, it will reach Earth. Your home will be among the first to fall. That night, Jake found Lisa in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He sat beside her in silence for a while. I don't want you to go, she said finally. We've already lost so much. I don't want to lose you too. I don't want to go either, Jake admitted. I've finally found something worth living for. A purpose. People I care about. He looked at her. You. Lisa turned to him, tears streaming down her face. Then don't do it, stay. We'll find another way. Jake wanted to agree. He wanted to be selfish just this once, but he couldn't. The Forerunners were wrong, he said quietly. They had the power to save everyone, and they chose to save only themselves. They abandoned their children to face the Devourers alone. I won't make that mistake. Lisa took his hand. Then I'm coming with you. Someone needs to make sure you don't do anything stupid. He smiled despite everything. I need you here, to take care of the Keeper's knowledge, to make sure it's used wisely. Someone I trust has to stay behind. They sat together until dawn, holding hands, not speaking. There was nothing more to say. 3 days later, a strike force assembled. 100 ships, the best pilots, the finest warriors from every species. They would punch through the Devourer lines and reach the Prime's construct. Then Jake would do what needed to be done. The journey to the Galactic Rim took 2 days. They fought their way through swarms of Devourers, losing ships with every parsec. By the time they reached the Prime's construct, only 30 vessels remained. The construct was impossible. It stretched across space like a web of twisted metal and crystallized darkness. At its center sat the Prime Devourer, a thing so vast that it had its own gravity well. It looked at their fleet with countless eyes, and Jake felt its hunger like a physical weight. All ships, this is Morrison, Jake said over the fleet channel. Thank you for everything you've done, for believing in humanity when we were just children among giants. Whatever happens next, remember that we stood together. Remember that we fought." Kate's voice came over his private channel. "Come back to us, big brother." "I'll try," he lied. The fleet engaged the Prime's defenses while Jake's ship, guided by the Keeper, dove toward the center of the construct. Lesser Devourers swarmed around him, but the Keeper's shields held. The two fleets faced each other in tense silence. Jake stood on the bridge of the new Forerunner warship, his hands hovering over controls that felt like extensions of his own nervous system. One wrong move, one misunderstood gesture, and the shooting would start. Millions would die. High Arbiter Thexnar's face filled the main screen. The ancient Viridian looked older than Jake remembered, his scales duller, his glowing eyes dimmer. "This standoff serves no one, human," Thexnar said wearily. "Too many have already died because of your stubbornness. Surrender the Keeper and we can end this peacefully." Jake was about to respond when every screen on the bridge suddenly went dark. The Keeper's voice filled the ship, urgent and alarmed. "Emergency protocols activating. Long-range sensors have detected anomalies at the Galactic Rim. Initiating priority alert." The screens flickered back to life, but they no longer showed the Coalition fleet. Instead, they displayed readings from the edge of the galaxy, where stars began to thin out into the vast darkness between galaxies. "What am I looking at?" Jake asked. "Spatial distortions," the Keeper replied. "Identical to readings taken 3 million years ago, just before the Forerunners made their final decision to ascend. The Devourers are returning." Lisa stepped forward, her face pale. "Devourers? What are those?" The Keeper showed them images from its archives. Jake felt his stomach turn. The creatures, if they could even be called that, looked wrong. They existed partially outside normal space, their forms shifting and writhing in ways that hurt to watch. They were vast, some larger than moons, and they moved through space like sharks through water. "The Devourers consume everything," the Keeper explained. "Matter, energy, even the fabric of space itself. They come from dimensions beyond our understanding, drawn to galaxies with abundant life. The Forerunners fought them for 1,000 years and could not win. That is why they ascended. They could not destroy the Devourers, so they fled to a higher plane of existence." "But they left you behind," Jake said quietly. "They left their technology for us." "Yes," the Keeper confirmed. "The genetic markers they planted were not just about inheritance. They were about survival. Only beings with these markers can fully utilize Forerunner weapon systems. Systems designed specifically to fight the Devourers." Nick was studying the sensor readings with wide eyes. "How long until they get here?" 3 months, the Keeper said. "Maybe 4. They move slowly through normal space, but once they arrive, they will spread rapidly. They will consume this galaxy, just as they have consumed countless others." Jake felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The political crisis, the standoff with the Coalition, all of it suddenly seemed small and petty compared to this threat. "Send this information to all ships," he ordered. "Coalition and Allied forces both. They need to see this." The Keeper transmitted the data. Jake watched as confusion and then horror spread through both fleets. On the main screen, Thexanar's expression changed from anger to fear. "This cannot be real," the Arbiter whispered. "The Devourers are myths, stories we tell children to frighten them. They're real," Jake said firmly. "And they're coming. We can keep fighting each other, or we can work together to survive. Your choice, Arbiter." For a long moment, Thexnar said nothing. Then he closed his eyes and nodded slowly. "What do you need?" he asked. The next weeks passed in a blur of desperate activity. The Coalition Council, faced with extinction, had no choice but to accept human leadership. Jake found himself commanding a combined fleet of over 1,000 ships, with more arriving every day from across the galaxy. The Keeper worked constantly, using its fabrication systems to build more Forerunner warships. But there was a problem. The ships needed human operators to reach their full potential, specifically humans with the genetic markers. "How many humans have the markers?" Lisa asked, studying the data. "Approximately 30% of your species," the Keeper replied. "But training them to use Forerunner technology would take years. Time we do not have." Jake made a decision that would haunt him. "Can you create neural implants? Something that would let humans access Forerunner knowledge directly?" "Yes," the Keeper said. "But such implants are dangerous. They flood the mind with information, Some recipients will not survive the process. How many will we lose? Lisa asked quietly. Approximately 10%, the keeper estimated. Jake felt sick. He was asking people to risk their lives just to learn how to fight. But what choice did they have? We need volunteers, he said finally. People who understand the risks and choose to take them anyway. They put out the call across Earth and human colonies. Jake expected maybe a few hundred volunteers. Instead, thousands responded. Among them was his sister, Kate Morrison, a combat pilot he hadn't seen in 5 years. She arrived on a transport ship, her hair cut military short, her eyes hard with determination. "Kate," Jake said, pulling her into a hug. "What are you doing here?" "Same thing you are," she replied. "Fighting for humanity's survival. You didn't think I'd let my big brother have all the glory, did you?" The implant procedure was brutal. Jake watched through observation windows as volunteers were fitted with neural interfaces that connected their minds to Forerunner databases. Most survived. Some screamed as their minds were overwhelmed. A few never woke up. Kate survived. She emerged from the procedure pale and shaken, but her eyes now held a distant look as if she could see things others couldn't. "It's incredible," she whispered. "I can feel the ship's systems. I know how they work. It's like I've been flying these ships my whole life." 2 months after the Keeper's warning, the Devourers reached the Galactic Rim. The first attack came at a remote colony world called Haven's Rest. It was home to 3 billion people from a dozen different species. Jake watched the battle through long-range sensors, helpless. The defense fleet was brave. They threw everything they had at the Devourers. But conventional weapons passed through the creatures like they weren't even there. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic rounds, nothing worked. The Devourers descended on Haven's Rest like locusts. They consumed the planet's atmosphere first, then the oceans, then the land itself. In 6 hours, a thriving world was reduced to a ball of strange, twisted matter that hurt to look at. 3 billion people died. Not a single person escaped. The galaxy panicked. Ships fled from the rim worlds in a mass exodus. The Coalition Council demanded answers. Demanded that Jake and his Forerunner weapons save them. "We're not ready," Nick said, his voice strained. "We've only built 30 warships. We don't have enough trained pilots. We need more time." "We don't have more time," Jake replied. He looked at the tactical display showing Devourer movements. They were spreading along the rim, consuming world after world. "We fight with what we have, or we watch the galaxy die." The next target was a mining colony called Keltar 9. It had a small population, only 50,000, but it was strategically important. Jake made the decision to defend it. If they couldn't protect one colony, they couldn't protect anything. The fleet assembled near Keltar 9. 30 Forerunner warships piloted by humans with neural implants, supported by 500 Coalition vessels. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Jake stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Devourers approach. There were 3 of them, each the size of a small moon. They moved slowly but inexorably, like death itself made manifest. "All ships, this is Morrison," he said over the fleet-wide channel. "Today we make our stand. Today we show these things that this galaxy belongs to us. For our homes. For our families. For every species that calls this place home." The Devourers reached weapons range. The Coalition ships opened fire first, their weapons lighting up space. As expected, the attacks passed harmlessly through the creatures. Then the Forerunner ships engaged. Jake felt the ship respond to his thoughts. He didn't pull triggers or press buttons. He simply wanted the weapons to fire, and they did. Phase disruptors lanced out, hitting the nearest Devourer. The creature screamed. It was a sound that shouldn't have been possible in the vacuum of space, but somehow everyone heard it. The Devourer's form solidified, pulled fully into normal space by the phase disruptors. "It's working!" Lisa shouted from her station. "The disruptors are anchoring them in our reality. Now hit them with everything else." The Forerunner ships unleashed their full arsenal. Reality-warping missiles that twisted space itself. Energy beams that burned hotter than stars. Gravity wells that compressed matter to impossible densities. The first Devourer died, its impossible form unraveling into streams of energy that dissipated into the void. The fleet cheered. They had killed one. It could be done, but the other 2 Devourers weren't retreating. They were adapting. They moved faster now, dodging the phase disruptors. They reached the fleet and began to feed. Ships vanished as the Devourers touched them, consumed in seconds. Jake watched in horror as a coalition destroyer simply ceased to exist, its 1,000 crew members dying before they could even scream. "Break formation," he ordered. "Don't let them touch you. Keep moving and keep firing." The battle became a chaotic dance. Ships darted between the Devourers, firing when they had clear shots, running when they got too close. The Forerunner warships took the lead, using their superior speed and weapons to harry the creatures. Kate's voice crackled over the communicati. He reached the interface point, a chamber inside the construct where the reality bomb could be activated. He stepped out of his ship and approached the crystalline column at the chamber's center. "Are you ready, Captain Morrison?" the Keeper asked. Jake took a deep breath. "No, but I don't think anyone ever is ready for this." He placed his hands on the column and let the ascension process begin. Pain exploded through his body. His consciousness began to expand, spreading beyond the limits of his physical form. He felt himself dissolving, becoming something else, something more. He could see across dimensions, perceive time as a flowing river rather than a straight line. And he saw the Forerunners. They existed as beings of pure thought, scattered across higher dimensions. They had been watching, waiting. And now they welcomed him. Jake merged with the Keeper, and together they became something new. A fusion of human determination and Forerunner knowledge. He reached out with his new senses and grasped the reality bomb. The weapon activated. Reality itself screamed as the bomb erased the Prime Devourer from existence. Not just killed it, but removed it completely as if it had never been. The construct collapsed, and without the Prime's coordination, the Devourers across the galaxy became confused and disorganized. The war was won, but Jake Morrison was gone. His body had dissolved during the ascension. On the bridge of the flagship, Lisa watched through sensors as his ship drifted empty through the void. She fell to her knees, grief overwhelming her. Nick put his hand on her shoulder, tears running down his own face. Around them, the fleet celebrated victory, but their small group mourned. The cleanup took months. With the Devourers disorganized, they were easy to hunt down and destroy. The galaxy slowly began to heal. The coalition was reformed with new principles of equality and cooperation. Humanity was given a seat at the center of galactic government, no longer children but recognized leaders. Lisa became the director of the Forerunner Studies Institute. She worked to understand the technology Jake had left behind, ensuring it was shared fairly among all species. Nick designed new ships that combined human, coalition, and Forerunner innovations. Velkoth served as the first non-human ambassador to Earth. Kate retired from military service. She said she had seen enough war for one lifetime. 1 year after the final battle, Lisa visited the Keeper's installation. It had become a monument, a place where people from every species came to remember those who had died in the war. She stood in the main chamber where Jake had first activated the Keeper. The crystal tower was still there, glowing softly in the darkness. "I miss you," she whispered. "Every day I miss you." She placed her hand on the tower's surface just as Jake had done so long ago. The crystal warmed under her touch. Then words appeared in the air, glowing letters that made her heart skip. "I'm still here, still watching. Tell them the Creator keeps his promises." Lisa's breath caught. She looked up at the crystal tower with wonder and hope. "You found a way," she said, smiling through tears. "You found a way to stay." The tower pulsed with warm light, and Lisa felt a presence familiar and comforting. Jake had ascended, had become something beyond human, but he had also kept his human,